welcome to Murphy's Garden. You may notice from behind me that we're not actually in our garden at home, we're on tour. This is Murphy on tour visiting his Nana and Grandpa. So we thought it would be nice to just show this garden. This is a very different garden from our garden in Shropshire. This is in Essex, and this garden is a very established garden, whereas ours is obviously quite a new garden. My mum and dad, we moved here as a family in the late 1980s. This garden, the chap who had it before my mum and dad, he was a great admirer of Adrian Bloom and Bressingham garden, which is in Norfolk, and he styled the garden on a similar theme to that. It's got lots of sort of island beds, lots of conifers, lots of heathers, so it's a completely different to my garden at home. But lovely, very much so lovely in its own way. So we're just going to have a look at this style of planting and how it works with this property. So the Alan and Adrian Bloom style of planting is to have, instead of having like large herbaceous borders, which obviously I've got at home, where you've got the tall perennials at the back and smaller ones at the front, they sort of revolutionised that and had the idea of having island beds where you can walk round the plants and look at them from different angles. So this garden has got a lot of those. There's a lot of heathers, and the garden looks absolutely fabulous in the spring. So in this border, we've got a large acer, some heathers and begonias. In the background here, we've got some herbaceous planting. We've got the Verbena bonariensis and the penstemon, and then this large gladitsia here in the background. Now this garden, when it was planted by the previous occupant, who was a very keen gardener, and as I said, he went to Bressingham quite a lot, and he literally went up there and bought, he must have had a huge budget, he bought loads and loads of conifers and shrubs, brought them all back and then planted them a bit like kind of furniture. So he tightly packed it, and the garden looked absolutely fabulous in its infancy when it was just planted, and so much so that that's when my mum fell in love with the property based solely on the garden. She absolutely loved the garden, and it did look nice, but the problem with that was that he didn't really allow for the plants to grow. And as the plants have grown so my mum and dad have been here now for like 50 years, and everything got obviously bigger, and the conifers were all competing for space and light, and unfortunately a lot of them have died. So the biggest job that my mum and dad have found that they've had to take trees, lovely trees, some of them out so that the other ones can survive. So this area here, there was a lot of conifers in the background here, but there were a lot were dying. So they've taken that out and replaced it with this gladitsia. So they have had to constantly change, constantly adapt the garden to keep it looking good. So here we've got this lovely weeping silver birch where they've just cut the lower branches and created this nice effect. It's a nice little seating area. So this is a garden in the south of England, so it does get the heat of the summer sun. So it's nice to have these little areas in different pockets of the garden just to get respite from the sunshine. So this is another island bed visible from the kitchen. So here we've got some lovely roses, and following on from Olivia's video she did on Alchemilla mollis, you can see this is a nice planting combination. We've got this another type of verbena. I don't know what it's called, it's a smaller version of verbena, so I might nab some of that for my own garden. Here the Alchemilla mollis, we had very heavy rain. This garden usually at this time of year is very dry, and the grass starts to go very brown because it's so dry. Actually, ironically, it's been the other way around. This year we're having the drought, and they've had some quite heavy rain. In fact, we had very heavy rain last night, so you can see the beadlets of water just sitting on the Alchemilla mollis, which looks lovely. So another island bed. Now this bed actually had a large magnolia in it, which was absolutely lovely, but it got so big. In fact, the conservatory which they had built was actually built around, the design of it was built around to try and accommodate the magnolia, but it got too big and too out of hand, so they did make that difficult decision of removing it, and that's been replaced with some roses. Here we've got some lovely echinacea and some cosmos, which my mum's grown from seed, and then of course this huge clump of arum lilies, which look fabulous. So this is the pond, which was put in originally when the garden was laid out, and they put the railing around it when the grandchildren came on the scene, stopped them falling in. Although Murphy, when he was a puppy, went right through the barge. He was so small and fell into the pond when it was the first winter. We had snow on the ground, we had to fish him out and warm him up quickly. But anyway, this is lovely. She's got lots of pots, lots of containers. This is an Olivia rose like we've got at home, and was absolutely magnificent. It's just gone over, but it's starting, it went over and now it's starting to rebud again. She's got lots of begonias. My mum really likes begonias because they can tolerate the heat and they tolerate the wet. So they got a battering last night from this heavy rain, but yet they still look lovely, and they have the advantage that when they have finished flowering, this sort of dead head. They don't go all slimy as petunias do. So lots more pots and containers. So here we've got a fabulous clump of agapanthus, which is just about to flower. Big pot of hostas, and then this lovely hydrangea. To be honest, I'm not sure which one that is. I don't know. It might be Annabelle, or I'm not sure. The garden is about 3/4 of an acre in its entirety, but it's being divided. We've got the squiggly lines of the beds, we've got the island beds, and then the garden's been divided into sort of 3 sections. We've got the first lawn, then we've got an archway which kind of invites the eye into something beyond. It's a circular archway which goes nicely with all the curves and the circular beds. So that leads to the garden beyond. So we'll go and have a look what's through here. So in this part of the garden opens up to a large lawn area, and as I said before, it's looking really green. Sometimes at this time of year it can go quite brown, but we've had lots of rain, so it's good. So we've got more islands, lots of seating, little seats tucked away everywhere, got a nice swing seat, and then in this area we've got a large herbaceous border. Another little seating area, and this one's tucked under. This is a weeping beech tree, which is absolutely lovely. This one we used to use when the children were little. We had a rope on it, and the children used to use it as a swing, but it also makes a nice area to tuck a little seat under and again get away from the heat of the day. So the height in this garden definitely comes from the mature trees. We've got these huge cedars which look really lovely in the garden and provide lots of privacy. So there are houses round about, but when you're in the garden you feel that you're in this very tranquil, peaceful spot, and it's really lovely. It gives lots of privacy. So here we've got some more island beds, and this is all conifers, heathers, and again you can walk round there. There's lots of curves, lots of interest, and the garden just flows really harmoniously together with all the curves and circles. So this is the final part of the garden, and we've got an orchard up here. This is a sort of wilder area, so we'll just go and have a look. So we've got some apple trees. I know there is a bramley and a cox apple tree. I think this is the cox and the other one's the bramley. And then also we've got the working part of the garden. We've got the compost heap. I shall show you my dad's beautiful compost. So in here is all the compost. So we've got this lovely, beautiful powdery compost, and it's made up mostly of grass clippings and then lots of the bits that kind of fall off the conifers. So I guess if you tested it, it would be quite ericaceous really, which suits the conditions because we've got lots of camellias, rhododendrons, and obviously the heathers too, which like those conditions. So this is I'm now in the herbaceous border. This did have a lot of large conifers here, which we're just getting. What happens with the conifers is that if you get some dieback on one side because the two conifers are touching, it doesn't really come back again, as you can see with what's happened with this conifer over here. So anyway, we've cleared, or not we, my mum and dad have cleared these conifers from the back here, and that's created this opportunity to plant more herbaceous perennials. They've put this Photinia, the red robin, and over time obviously that will grow up and give a bit more privacy from the neighbouring property beyond. So this is a good example where the plants were planted too close together. So here we had, can't remember what it was, but some sort of conifer, and it was planted very close to this yew, and you can see what's happened is that the yew on this side has completely died back, but on the other side actually it's perfect. But the nice thing, unlike conifers, which this one had died back on one side, so that's why they've removed this one, and they've kept the yew in. And the nice thing about yew, this is a really good example that you can see, it does come back from old growth, which the conifer doesn't. So look, already they've got these lovely new shoots, and before very long that will look absolutely perfect again. So that will all recover, and that's good. So that's what you can do if you've got an old yew hedge that needs reinvigorating. Cut hard into it and it will grow back. So over the years this has very much been a family garden. It's been enjoyed by us as children, and now obviously as the grandchildren have grown up here as well. So we've had lots of fun in this garden. It's a lovely garden, real credit to my mum and dad who've looked after it for years. So thank you very much for joining me, and I very much hope you've enjoyed this tour of my parents' garden. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.